Hi, Brant Cooper here. I'm fortunate I get to travel around the world speaking with startup founders, investors, ecosystem developers. I've learned a lot in my travels. I've got some stories, and I have some thinking that I love to share. Welcome to Brant's Rant. Hey everyone, it's Brant Cooper back here for another Brant's Rant. Meet me over at brantcooper.com and learn more about my book, Disruption Proof. Past few rants, and in the future, I'm going to be breaking down different components of the book to help your organizations become more rad, resilient, able to withstand the, it seems like, endless disruption, all these storms that are happening that upset our normal course of business or really applied to other organizations as well. Aware, so increasing our awareness of what's going on in our ecosystems, in our environments, with our customers, our colleagues, our bosses, and then dynamically be able to change course based upon what we've learned so that we're always focused on, really it's optimizing the efficiency of creating value. And so you've heard me rant about this idea about optimizing efficiency for financial sake. We get great value, wealth, when we optimize efficiency for creating value for others. If we only create the financial efficiency, we end up losing the value, and then that destroys the business. So if you're actually a long-term stockholder, you want businesses to maximize the efficiency of accomplishing their mission, not just hitting their numbers. Almost a whole rant in itself, right? Well, I think I've done that rant before. I wanted to talk this week about the implementation phases. And so we've got sort of an acronym there that we misspell. Don't you hate those? Like, oh yeah, they call it KASE, C-A-S-E. What does that C stand for? No, it's KASE, K-A-S-E. So it's Kickstart, Accelerate, Scale, and then Endure. And I want to focus on Kickstart today because I think a lot of organizations have kickstarted or have tried to kickstart, and I think that there's a lot of great ways out there to kickstart, but it's insufficient on itself. And I think the biggest mistake that organizations make is that they kickstart the behavior change and they think that that's the final step. And so again, to me, the ultimate goal, how you create this rad organization, is that you have to apply this behavior and this mindset that's based upon the 5 E's: empathy, exploration, evidence, equilibrium, and ethics throughout the organization. From the front line to the C-suite, from innovation group to core office functions like HR. And so everybody needs to apply these different behaviors at some level. And so the Kickstart phase that I like is basically the hackathon, except that I don't call it a hackathon, I call it an impactathon. And you can go to this URL, impactathon.com. Now, it's not impact, I-M-P-A-C-T, it's impact, I-M-P-A-C-K, a-thon. But the idea there is that you're running sort of like a startup weekend, but it's where you're testing out these 5 E's in service to generating real impact in your business. So if you want to, you can use these in order to do breakthrough innovation. That's all fine and good, but just understand you're not going to do it. You're not going to succeed. I'll talk about why later. That's fool's gold, if you ask me. What you really want is to apply these 5 E's in order to get the core business functioning differently. The core business figuring out how to increase efficiency, solve problems, provide better service to internal customers, and make incremental changes to existing products and services, as well as then establishing where you should be doing more in-depth exploration work that may result in future revenue growth, but that is maybe, a few years away. And so the idea of the Impactathon is that essentially you're doing this as, maybe volunteer only, or you can actually spend some money to actually make it a formal event, but you do 2 days, 2.5, maybe 3 days, where teams self-organize around ideas that provide value to the company. And so these ideas can come from anywhere. They can come from individuals, because this is where people, Genji Genbutsu, people near the source of problems are the ones that actually come up with the ways to solve the problem. So what we're doing is empowering those people for 2 or 3 days to test whether their solutions will work. But it's not impactathon, or not a hackathon in the sense that they're actually going to go develop product. It's an impactathon in the sense that they're going to go and understand their stakeholders. They're going to gather empathy for their stakeholders, whether those are internal stakeholders or whether those are external customers. and they're going to ideate, come up with different solutions, and then they're going to start testing whether those solutions might work. And so they're going to act exactly like a startup. It's not about building product. It's not about building new technology, at least at first. It's about understanding the problem deeply, figuring out if it's a solvable problem, and then taking the best steps, completely solution agnostic, the best steps in order to solve that problem. So again, ideas come from individuals. Ideas can come from business initiatives that company officers, C-suite, have already established, so it can be within these strategic guardrails that have already been established. It could be problems that leaders are already facing, right? They sit in their office and they're thinking about, holy crap, how do I get out of this hole I'm in? How do I solve this problem? How do I solve this? These two teams are not getting together. My design group is not interacting well with my manufacturing group. So they can be process efficiencies. They can be supply chain problems. They can be personnel problems. They can be HR needs to roll out a new performance management system, where their ability to hire millennials is suffering, or they can't hire software engineers. Any problems or initiatives inside of the business that will drive near-term impact become ideas that can be tackled during the Impactathon. And believe me, this is not an idea competition. Ideas are literally dime a dozen. There's no shortage of ideas. The idea part is the easiest way to do it. If you want to use an idea platform to track these, that's awesome. But the work is not coming up with the idea. The work is testing the idea. And testing the idea does not mean going and leveraging technology in order to just do it. It's not spending a bunch of money building out the solution. It's testing whether the solution is viable. It's testing whether you even understand what the needs are. So it's very fundamental, lean startup, design thinking type work, human-centered design. And yet they're working in teams, and the teams form around ideas that they want to work on. And it's social, it's fun, and it's a way to practice the desired behaviors. And so really step one is, what are the desired behaviors? And I think that you have to leverage the people that are inside the organization already. Kind of know, there's people there that already know what these ideas are. And I think it should not be, in my opinion, just design thinking. It should not be just lean startup. It should not be just agile, but get down to the level of behavior that you want to see. I want to see, empathy development. I want to see defining and running disciplined experiments. I want to see us showing the evidence to people and making decisions based upon evidence. And so you can have leaders that are acting as the investment boards that listen to the pitches, but the pitches are about evidence, not about the idea. And the decisions by the leadership should be about the evidence, not about what they view in their own biased form, what they believe the best ideas are. That's old school. It assumes that people have knowledge that they don't necessarily have. It assumes they have expertise that they might not have. All of those things are valuable. Expertise is great. Knowledge is great. Learning is great. Intuition is great. So it's a mix of those things, but it isn't based upon hierarchy. It's not based upon force of personality. It's not based upon, I'm your boss, and so we're doing it this way. That's the behavior that we want to see. So it's not only the behavior of the teams that are working on these 5 E's and developing solutions that have near-term impact. It's this leadership layer that also has to practice new skill sets. They're acting more like investors in the sense that they're removing obstacles. They're holding teams accountable to more startup-like metrics. They're funding projects based upon hitting milestones, not based upon, annual operational budgets. And so this Kickstart idea, this Kickstart phase is just, and it doesn't matter if the first one sucks, it's getting it started. This story's been told many times, but Ben Blank started this at Intuit with his 100 Startups in 100 Days program. And he and Aaron Eden and others, Innovation Catalyst, went out to establish 100 internal startups within 100 days. And, I think they got 80 or 90, very close. Very quickly drove some real impact, 10, 15, $20 million worth of impact that over the years, over the decades since is 2 or 3 times greater than that. But they're fun, they're social. You should supply food and beverage and space. I think eventually one has to figure out how to institutionalize that a little bit, so it probably can't be all volunteer. And you can establish rules around the amount of free time that people can spend if they're doing, working on one of these ideas that has been funded by a sponsor, has their 10% free time. But there's a bunch of other companies that have done that as well. And I think it works if it's within specific guardrails. And there's a bunch of different companies that have done this successfully. Bayer had a Catalyst program, was a little bit more formal, where they had money that they invested in startups all over the world, internal startups all over the world focused on improving products and services. It's really extraordinary work. Adobe, of course, established the Kickbox. And so that was a good effort. Swisscom took the Kickbox and extended that more, and they've got an ongoing program where they continue to have these teams testing their ideas out and receiving funding based upon that. Nestle has Ingenious and has done the exact same thing. Startup teams, work on evidence for their ideas, and then they show their ideas, pitch their ideas, and have a chance of getting funding and continue to work on their ideas. And the Ingenious program itself sort of runs as like a center of excellence, so it can provide coaching and can provide access to outside consultants or other resources in order to get projects that are funded to the next stage. Cisco for many years had their Cisco Everywhere program. I think that that's modified now since then, but Mathilde Dervé ran that program very successfully inside of Cisco, and a number of projects that succeeded out of that and made it to market. There's a number of ways, a number of successes in getting kickstarted. But I have to emphasize, in my opinion, a lot of those companies that I just mentioned even, they stop there, and it stops short of transforming the core business. And in my opinion, if you don't get all the way into the core business, you're going to start seeing those programs taper off, because oftentimes even the successful initiatives get to a certain point and they just don't measure up to what the core revenues are. And frankly, a lot of these core business parts have learned so much that their execution work is really around lowering costs, squeezing money out of their workers, or work out of their workers, and squeezing money out of their customers without providing this value. And it starts this downward spiral that starts destroying the muscle of the company, starts destroying the value, and that's the big danger. And so this Kickstart is literally that. It's how do we start this program, and then how do we move it in such a way that core business starts recognizing that that's the behavior that they need as well. And this is where the fundamental change happens, is when the core business starts requesting some of that mindset into the way they operate. And it's very insightful, and it requires leadership that sees that there's uncertainty that the core business is facing, and so that they need a new mindset in order to expand that. But it also requires pressure from the C-suite to really kind of force those leaders to look at that and how they solve these bigger problems versus just executing harder, which again is kind of that 20th century command and control, hierarchical, top-down answer to everything. Efficiency for efficiency's sake, efficiency for financial sake is the hammer that never met a non-nail. Hey, thanks for listening to Brandt's Rant. If we're choosing capitalism here as a society, then let's make it work for a better world. If you'd like to join me as we redefine capitalism for the 21st century, go to beatcoop.co/D4A. Also, if you have a pressing issue that you're facing in your innovation group, your product group, your startup, and want to join me on video, see the link below. Subscribe, like, see you next time.